Today concludes the live evidence which the inquiry will hear in phase 1, including the commemorative portraits from the bereaved families, the impact statements from the families of the other child victims, C6, and the impact statements from the adult victims. The evidence has extended over 9 weeks of hearings, including 25 impact statements and commemorative portraits, and the evidence from over 100 witnesses, of whom 67 gave live evidence. The next stage of the inquiry is to receive written closing submissions on the substantive issues from the core participants. As has been previously notified, these are to be provided to the inquiry in writing by midday on the 24th of November. There will be no oral hearing for the closing submissions, but the written submissions will be published on the inquiry's website after they've been checked for any necessary redactions in line with the inquiry's restriction orders and the approach we've taken to disclosure. The page limit I have imposed is not to be treated as a target. I would be most assisted by focused submissions that reference the evidence that has been given, and in particular to be provided with observations on substantive recommendations that it is considered that I should make. The inquiry will then move into a period of consideration and report writing for this phase, including sending any warning letters as required by Rule 13, and then considering the responses that are received. Further information will come from the solicitor to the inquiry in the near future, including notice of when warning letters should be anticipated. Given that there will be advance notice of when to expect these to arrive, the period for responding will be a relatively short one. I expect any recipients to comply with that period as set, save for in the most exceptional circumstances, with me having been notified in advance of any difficulties. I wish to thank the Lord Mayor of Liverpool and the staff of the Town Hall for generously hosting this inquiry. This has proved to be a perfect venue. And to RTS and EPIC for the vital technical support they have provided throughout these proceedings. Particular thanks are owed to the stenographer for her heroic and long-suffering contribution. Her ability accurately to decipher the unintelligible has been markedly impressive. I want especially, however, to thank all the core participants for their consistent assistance, almost without exception, during the 9 weeks of these hearings. I am acutely conscious that we imposed considerable demands on you, most particularly to respond at speed to requests for disclosure and witness statements, and then to digest the disclosure from others, sometimes only shortly before the evidence was given in this room. You have responded in an impressively public-spirited manner, thereby enabling us to live up to the expectations of the previous Home Secretary of progressing this inquiry at pace in order to provide early answers for the victims and the wider public. Although we have all had to work hard as a consequence, I remain firmly of the belief that stretching out this process over months and even years tends to lessen the value of inquiries of this kind, and by failing to provide early answers, increases the burden for the victims and their families by perpetuating the lack of an explanation as to how such a cruel and merciless event was able to occur. I will do all I can with the assistance of the inquiry team to produce the report as quickly as we are able. But as I have already described, we have heard a very considerable amount of evidence, a significant part of which was disclosed in documentary form only relatively recently. I need to think about the detail of what the many witnesses have said and what the documents have revealed. It will not help if I produce a report that fails adequately to reflect the proper conclusions that should be drawn from this significant body of evidence. There are criticisms and recommendations that will need to be made, but I must ensure that they are based fairly on the evidence, and as regards recommendations, that they will meaningfully assist in reducing the chances of this kind of event ever occurring again. I will do all I can to complete this task speedily, but I'm going to avoid the trap of making a commitment now as to the precise date of delivery. I only promise that I will undertake this task as speedily as I am able. The little I am able to say is that I anticipate that the Phase 1 report will be completed at the latest in the spring of next year. Further detail as regards the timings will be made available to the core participants and to the public in due course. So I repeat my thanks to the core participants for responding to the expectations of the inquiry in such a, generally speaking, impressive way. However, given the deep obligation that rests on all of us to provide answers to the victims and their families, I would in truth have expected nothing less. Our principal responsibility lies to them to provide the best possible explanation as to why and how this terrible event occurred, and to be brave about suggesting the changes that ought to be made to prevent, if we can, a repetition. I will rise.